Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a major story that has shaken the world and stirred intense global reactions. Vladimir Putin's furious outburst after the attack on the Crimea Bridge has left political analysts, world leaders, and millions of people stunned. This was not just another military strike. It was a hit on one of Russia's most important and symbolic structures, and the aftermath has ignited political tension on a scale we haven't seen in months. The Crimea Bridge, also known as the Kerch Bridge, connects mainland Russia to the Crimean Peninsula. It's not just a piece of infrastructure. For Putin, it's a symbol of Russian dominance and his personal victory after annexing Crimea in 2014. The bridge was opened in 2018 with great pride. Putin himself drove across it during the inauguration to demonstrate Russia's control and the success of his vision. So when explosions tore through the bridge once again, it wasn't only steel and concrete that took the hit. It was Putin's pride and authority. Reports suggest that the attack came in the early hours of the morning, with massive explosions targeting the bridge's supports. The attack disrupted vehicle traffic, created chaos across Russian supply lines, and sparked a wave of emergency responses from Moscow. Ukrainian intelligence sources hinted that this was a deliberate and highly calculated operation, aimed at cutting off key logistical routes that Russia relies on for its war efforts in southern Ukraine. Almost immediately after the incident, Putin addressed the Russian people with a visibly angry and emotional tone. His words carried more than just fury. They carried a warning. He accused Ukraine of carrying out what he called a terrorist act against Russian civilians. He vowed retaliation and claimed that Ukraine's leadership had no interest in peace or negotiation. His statement, broadcast across Russian state media, sent a message to both domestic and international audiences that Russia would not let this strike go unanswered. For many watching around the world, this outburst revealed something deeper. It showed a leader under enormous pressure. Putin's confidence had been shaken, and the bridge attack struck a nerve. It undermined his image of control and stability. The fact that such a high-profile structure, protected by layers of defenses, could be struck again exposed the vulnerabilities in Russia's war strategy. Ukraine, on the other hand, celebrated the strike as a strategic success. While officials did not directly claim responsibility, Ukrainian sources indicated that the operation had been planned for months. The attack was described as a clear message that Russia's occupation of Crimea remains illegitimate, and that Ukraine will continue to challenge it in every possible way. The symbolism could not have been clearer. Ukraine was hitting Russia not just militarily but psychologically. The global reaction came quickly. Western nations expressed concern over potential escalation, while some officials quietly noted that Ukraine has the right to strike military and logistical targets used by Russian forces. Meanwhile, Russia's allies condemned the attack, calling it a provocation that could destabilize any ongoing peace discussions. The situation instantly raised fears that Russia could launch another wave of massive retaliatory missile strikes against Ukrainian cities. Within hours of Putin's statement, reports began emerging of intensified Russian attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure and civilian areas. Explosions were heard in Kiev, Odessa, and other major cities as air raid sirens echoed through the night. Russian officials framed these strikes as a response to what they labeled terrorism. In truth, it was clear that Putin's anger had turned into action. Observers noted that Putin's tone was more emotional than usual. His outbursts seemed to be aimed as much at his domestic audience as at Ukraine. He needed to show strength and control after such a high-profile humiliation. For years, Russian propaganda portrayed the Crimea Bridge as an untouchable symbol of Russian engineering and national pride. Now that image was shattered, the Kremlin's credibility took a blow, and Putin's fury reflected that loss of prestige. What makes this moment even more significant is its timing. The attack happened just as discussions about possible ceasefire talks were being whispered behind the scenes. With this explosion, any hope of diplomatic progress seemed to vanish overnight. Putin declared that negotiating with what he called terrorists was impossible. Ukraine, meanwhile, said peace cannot come until Russia withdraws completely from occupied territories. Both sides hardened their positions, and the war took another dangerous turn. The Crimea Bridge has always been more than a piece of infrastructure. It's a powerful psychological weapon. For Russia, it symbolizes permanence, a bridge that physically and politically binds Crimea to Russia forever. For Ukraine, attacking it is a way to show that occupation will never be accepted as permanent. Every time that bridge is hit, it reminds the world that Crimea remains contested and that the war is far from over. The method of attack this time was also telling. Ukrainian intelligence reportedly used underwater drones loaded with explosives, capable of navigating beneath the bridge's defenses. This approach demonstrated a new level of technological sophistication in Ukraine's military strategy. It also raised alarm bells in Moscow, as it showed that even their most heavily guarded assets are vulnerable to unconventional tactics. Putin's reaction went beyond military retaliation. His speech following the attack carried emotional undertones that hinted at frustration. He accused the West of orchestrating the attack through Ukraine, claiming that Western intelligence and technology played a role. He warned that further provocations would result in what he called consequences the world has never seen. Such language rekindled fears of escalation and even the potential use of more extreme military options. Inside Russia, state media quickly moved to control the narrative. News channels replayed Putin's words, emphasizing his anger and determination. Footage of emergency crews repairing the bridge circulated endlessly, meant to reassure the public that Russia was in control. But on social media, a different story spread. Videos showing the flames, the damaged roadway, and the panic among drivers crossing the bridge at the time of the explosion. It became impossible to hide the scale of the incident. International analysts began to question what Putin's next steps might be. Some speculated that his outburst was a calculated move to rally public support, turning anger into unity. Others saw it as a genuine moment of loss of composure, a reflection of how deeply the strike had hit him personally. Putin has long tied his leadership image to the annexation of Crimea, so when that symbol was attacked, it struck directly at the heart of his legacy. For Ukraine, the success of the attack served multiple purposes. Militarily, it disrupted a vital supply route. Psychologically, it showed that even the most protected Russian assets can be reached. Diplomatically, it reminded allies that Ukraine is still capable of decisive and daring operations despite the challenges on the battlefield. And politically, it sent a message that Ukraine will not settle for partial victory. The global media response has been intense. Headlines described Putin's furious meltdown and dramatic vow for revenge. Analysts debated whether this could lead to a new round of escalation or perhaps push both sides even further from peace. The world is watching closely because this conflict no longer affects just two nations. Its consequences reach global markets, energy supplies, and geopolitical alliances. What stands out most in this story is how personal it has become. The bridge is more than a target, it's a symbol of identity, pride, and legitimacy. Putin's emotional reaction reflects that this strike hit deeper than the battlefield. It attacked his narrative of victory, his image as a leader who brings stability, and his claim that Crimea is forever Russian. As repairs begin once again on the bridge, the question remains, can Russia secure it against future attacks? The reality is that every repair becomes a reminder of vulnerability. Every reconstruction becomes a repetition of loss. And every time the bridge is hit, it reinforces Ukraine's resolve and the world's perception that Russia's grip on Crimea may not be as unbreakable as it claims. For now, the tension is rising. Russia continues to strike Ukrainian targets in retaliation. Ukraine continues to prepare new strategies, refusing to back down. Western leaders call for restraint, but both sides are digging in deeper. The Crimean Bridge has once again become a symbol not of unity or power, but of the fragility of control in modern warfare. Putin's outburst after this attack will likely be remembered as one of the most emotional moments of his presidency. It revealed a side of him rarely seen publicly, one of anger, frustration, and perhaps even fear. Whether that emotion will translate into calculated action or reckless escalation remains to be seen. This incident has changed the tone of the conflict. It has reminded the world that in war, symbols carry as much power as weapons. The bridge stands damaged but still standing, much like the political landscape surrounding it, scarred, unstable, and unpredictable. What happens next will depend on whether leaders choose to rebuild